Welcome everyone, 'tis the season to be chody. The holiday season is on us once again, so I decided what better way to kick off the season than to talk about some of my favorite gaming gifts during the Christmas time growing up. Now on this tree here, I actually have 6 gifts, and I am cheating a little bit. It's not a top 5, it's gonna be a top 6 because there were some of these that, I don't know, I just couldn't omit any one of these because they're all kind of special. So with that said, let's get started.
Oh, it's Friday night, don't know what I'm gonna do tonight. I could sit here and pick my nose while I watch a brand new video. Whoa, Top 5 Friday tonight. 6.
All right, first package here, and geez, oh, I guess whoever wrapped these didn't have opposable thumbs. So, man, I feel like a kid back in Christmas opening these gifts, and this is kind of like what's going on here if you think about it. This is 30 years later, and I'm reopening these gifts. So, okay, number 6 on the list is, I act surprised like I didn't know what it was, right? Super Star Wars. Now, Super Star Wars, this game I anticipated so much because I was reading Nintendo Power and I was seeing the screenshots that was coming out for this thing and I was like, wow, gotta have it. I gotta have it, right? It's whatever. But the point of the matter is that I was like a huge fan of the Star Wars games on the NES, this first one and Empire Strikes Back. Return of the Jedi was never made on the NES and it kind of disappointed me. But when this came out, I kind of knew why. They were working on some better games, much better games. Now they're harder, but they are much better than the NES versions, which are completely different games. But anyway, this game right here, I got this on Christmas and I played it nonstop. It was definitely one of my favorites.
5.
All right, so what do we have next? Let's go with this one right here. Now, this one wasn't originally on the list, but I decided to put it on there because it really was a big gift for me back then, and that is the original Game Boy. Now, at this point, I had an NES at my home, but gaming on the go, so to speak, was just out of my vocabulary. So whenever I saw this, just like a lot of different kids out there, when you saw this, you were like, wow, I could take this and play video games, the same video games that I'm playing at home, out on the road or at school or whatever. And yeah, they were not as good as the original, but it was still so cool because you could play those games. You know, so I remember one of my favorite being Alien 3 on the Game Boy. I think that was the very first game that I owned outside of Tetris, which obviously came with the system itself. But Alien 3, really good. Very cryptic in a lot of places of where to find items and such. That can be very frustrating, but I do still like the game and have a lot of nostalgia for it.
4.
All right, so what next? Let's do this little sucker right here. I think I know what this is. In fact, I know what this is. Oh yeah. Super Empire Strikes Back on the Super Nintendo. Now, just like the original Star Wars game, I was super anticipating this. And what really got me into wanting this game is there was an issue of Nintendo Power that came out and there was I think a 4-page spread on the making of this game. They were telling everybody, hey, this game's coming out and this is what we're doing to make it freaking amazing. They were showing how asteroids would animate in the asteroid field. They were showing visual not clips, but they were showing screen caps of Snowspeeder going across the snowy mountains and hills and stuff. And I immediately had this envisioned of putting myself in a snowspeeder. Without, this is what it would look like if I was in the movie on that Hoth battle. And I think this is why I anticipated this so much, is because the Hoth battle, my favorite moment in any Star Wars movie growing up, you could actually be in the Hoth battle. It felt like you were in it. And so that was enough for me. But unfortunately, when I got the game, which I was excited for I went and played I immediately played it and got to the Hoth level probably in about an hour, and it underwhelmed me a bit. And I think that just is due to the fact that I had it played up so much in my head. I was probably visualizing something along the lines of like now, the graphics that we have now, and it was all just crappy mode 7. I mean, it really looked terrible. They did the best they could with the technology that they had, but it was terrible. I mean, the walkers standing in one spot as you're speeding over, it just doesn't look right. But I soon got over it, and I still liked the game. So it is still one of my favorite games on the system.
Flea.
All right, so let's do this little puppy right here. All right, so this one is you can tell it's a system box. I know that, but what system? That's right, PlayStation. Yes, so, okay, the story behind this one is I was around the time of, oh, well, there goes that glass. Around the time of this system coming out and the N64 coming out, I was kind of getting out of gaming. I was getting older. I was in, 18, 19 or whatever. So I told my mom that I didn't want any Christmas presents. She asked me, and I kept saying no. She eventually said, hey, you tell me what you want, or I'm gonna get you something that you probably don't want. So I was like, fine, give me a PlayStation. And so when this sucker came in, I was surprised. I didn't exactly think I was going to get it. I just said it, and then boom, I actually got it. And it just kind of sat on the shelf for about 2 months because I was, whatever, gaming, whatever. I was getting older, right? But then it hit me, hey, let me try it out. So I started playing the demo disc that came with it. I was playing Wipeout, and I think you could play like one match in Tekken, like a couple of different characters, and that was it. And then it really whetted my appetite. I was like, okay, I gotta see more of this. I started renting games for it, and then eventually my first game I ever bought for it was Alien Trilogy. I mean, I was just a kid working minimum wage, or a young adult working minimum wage, so I couldn't go out and just spend money on games and stuff, but just from renting them and then playing Alien Trilogy, I was immediately hooked on the system after that, and I just couldn't get enough of it.
2.
All right, so here we go. This is definitely one of my favorites, and then whoever wrapped this really did a crappy job for it. But it is, yeah, Tmnt, the arcade game. Now, I was really into the arcade game growing up. Played that sucker all the time at Chuck E. Cheese and couldn't get enough of it. So when I knew this was coming out on home console, I definitely put it on my wish list. And I wasn't disappointed with it. I know some irate people out there don't like it because they think it's a watered down version of the arcade. And sure, yeah, of course it is. It's an NES compared to the architecture of an arcade. What do you expect, right? But it's still fun in my opinion. And I had a blast playing this because I could play the arcade game at home. And I didn't care if the graphics were not as good or if you couldn't play 4 players. I didn't have friends anyway. It didn't bother me any. So I got to play this arcade at home, had a blast with it. And I actually peeked under the tree with this one. I saw it under the tree. I knew it was in the shape of an NES box, so I was like, gotta see what that is, and opened it up. Saw that it was the arcade game, and I was like, okay, it's gonna be an awesome Christmas. Only problem then is you have to wait for it. I don't remember. I think it was like a couple of weeks before I actually got to open it and play it. So in that aspect, it kind of sucked because wow, the anticipation just kills you.
1.
All right, so the very last one here is obviously a system box. And this is without a doubt, and this is kind of cheating when I explain, but without a doubt, my favorite Christmas gift of all time was the Super Nintendo. My mother and my father was not going to get me a Super Nintendo because we already had an NES, and they didn't understand why this needed to be bought. It was like, okay, you have an NES, what's the big deal? I get it, I understand, I don't fault them for it. But as a kid, you knew what the difference is. Another 8 bits. Nobody knew what bits were, but you knew this one had more bits, so you had to get this thing, right? And not only that, you saw the awesome games that were coming out in whatever magazine you want. Maybe it was Nintendo Power, but whatever gaming magazine you saw the games that were coming out on this thing, and you saw how awesome it was. For me, Super Mario World. And so what I decided to do was, my grandmother was my only hope in this situation. My grandmother would buy all the grandkids presents individually. Well, I convinced all the kids to let her pull her money that she usually would spend on all of us separately to get one gift, Super Nintendo. The only caveat is it stayed at her house. No one kid got it. Well, I lived just like a 3-minute walk away from my grandmother, so I was fine with that. But anyway, yes, we got this. And my grandmother had a little bit extra money at the time. She was like, okay, you pick some games to go with it. So the Super Nintendo we were getting, I was like, okay, well, let's get Castlevania 4, Contra 3, UN Squadron, and Pilot Wings. So that Christmas, we opened up, all the kids opened up the Super Nintendo and those games. Talk about freaking, I almost said the F word just then. Think about that for a second. Like, those are some of the best games on the Super Nintendo, and then you open that the same night as the Super Nintendo itself. And so you had Super Mario World to go around with it. Good God, I can't tell you how amazing that day was, that night was. It is and was one of the best memories I've ever had as a kid. And you can't beat it, in my opinion. Super Nintendo and a bunch of awesome games that go along with it. So I remember staying like all night, all day the next day, and then probably like a month straight staying at my grandmother's house. And that's why I'm really good at those games on the system, is because I've played them the most, especially Pilot Wings and Castlevania 4, man. I'm really good at those. Contra 3 too. Although I've still never beat Contra 3 on the hardest difficulty. Only medium. Maybe I'm not as good as I think I am. Maybe I'm worthless.
Hello, darkness, my old friend.
Yikes! Where's the light switch?
That's my top 5/6 gaming gifts of my childhood. And you know, I've noticed, like, as I've gotten older, I really don't anticipate this time of year anymore. And I think we all kind of anticipated Christmas because, you know, it was a time where, as kids, that was a time when you got video games. And that and your birthday. I mean, you didn't have money to go around. Most of us didn't have money to go around and just buy a game like on a Tuesday. So we had to wait till Christmas and our birthdays to get stuff like this. And, you know, as you're getting older, I don't know if it's because of that. I could go to GameStop right now and buy the latest game that it's lost a little bit of its magic, or the fact that I'm just getting older and I see things a little bit different. But as a kid, you know, it was all about getting stuff like this. But as an adult, I think you get more joy out of giving stuff like this, and I've noticed that myself. I almost feel guilty nowadays when I get a present from somebody. I'd much rather see their faces light up whenever I give them something, and I know that's what my grandmother and my parents saw whenever they gave us this stuff, and I'm sure you as well. Just remember, I mean, yeah, video games are awesome, but it's at the end of the day, it's all about family, friends, and appreciating what you have around this time of year, and video games. So, thanks for watching, guys. Have a happy, super safe Christmas season, and there'll be more videos like this coming soon.